You ever notice how people get so scared when life nudges them forward? Just a tiny shove, a little whisper in the dark, and suddenly they cling to the old like it's some kind of lifeline. They act like staying exactly where they are is safer than moving an inch into the unknown, but someone keeps tugging at them, a feeling they can't shake, a direction they didn't choose but somehow keeps appearing right in front of them. People call it intuition, fate, timing, whatever helps them sleep, but deep down, they know it's more than that. It's that sensation that the ground beneath their feet isn't trying to trap them, it's trying to guide them, push them, lift them. You ever notice how people get so freaked out when something nudges them forward? Just a little push, a subtle tap, and suddenly they're clinging to the familiar like it's the only thing keeping them alive. They hold on so tight to the routines, the habits, the comfort of what they already know. They can't even see the hand guiding them towards something new. It's amusing, really, because they think that stillness is safety, that stagnation equals protection. They stare at the old, at what's worn and predictable, and call it stability, as if moving an inch beyond it would topple their carefully constructed little worlds. But life doesn't work that way. Life has this delicious sense of humor. It never nudges you toward comfort. It nudges you toward growth. And growth is messy, awkward, and impossible to control. See, the problem most people have is that they confuse movement with chaos. They think if the next step isn't obvious, if it doesn't fit neatly into their expectations, it's dangerous. They panic at uncertainty. They fret over shadows, ignoring the hand that's already placing them exactly where they need to be. But that's the beauty of being led. You don't see the whole staircase. You don't know where the next step lands, or how many more steps exist beyond it. All you know is that something bigger than your fear is pulling you forward, nudging you just enough to keep you from falling behind, and you have to trust it. Most people can't. They trip over their own hesitation, stumble into their doubts, and convince themselves that waiting is safer. And that's when it gets interesting, isn't it? Because the push isn't random. It's deliberate. It's precise. It knows exactly what you need to leave behind to make space for what's coming. Old friends drift out of your life. Old habits crumble. Old ideas vanish. And while you're busy complaining, panicking, or even resisting, something quietly rearranges the stage for the next act. The subtlety of it is exquisite, isn't it? You don't even realize the hands that move behind the curtain, the invisible threads that shift the scenery in your favor. You just feel that pull, that tiny itch at the edge of your awareness that tells you, step forward, even if you can't see the whole path yet. Most people want the spotlight, the grand announcement, the sign flashing in neon. They want proof, guarantee, certainty. They want to know the destination before they take the first step. But the real movers, the real survivors, the real winners, they know the secret. They know that waiting for permission, waiting for clarity, waiting for a perfect sign only delays the inevitable. Life doesn't announce its plans with drum rolls or fireworks. It nudges, it whispers, it pushes you gently, cunningly, deliberately, and only if you're willing to pay attention do you notice the pattern forming beneath the chaos. And it's funny, isn't it, how the same push that terrifies people can also empower them. The same uncertainty that makes them cling can also liberate. Because when you trust that you are being guided, even in the darkness, even in the mess, even when everything seems upside down, you start moving differently. You stop overthinking the obvious. You stop panicking at every unexpected turn. You start listening, really listening, not with your ears, but with something deeper, something quieter, something alive that senses the currents no one else can see. And those who cling, those who resist, they miss it. They miss the shift in energy, the alignment of circumstances, the subtle nudges that whisper, step here, now, not tomorrow, not next week, step here. But the ones who lean in, the ones who sense the pull and respond, they find themselves moving in ways they never imagined. Their steps aren't random. Their steps are precise, connected, meaningful, even if they don't realize it at the time. And that's the delicious part, how something that seems invisible, uncertain, even frightening, turns out to be exactly what they needed all along. It's never about the comfort of the old. It's never about the certainty of the familiar. It's about the tiny nudges, the quiet guidance, the invisible hand arranging the pieces while everyone else is busy complaining. Those nudges, subtle and cunning, are what prepare you for what comes next, even before you understand it. The world doesn't shout instructions. It whispers them to those who are paying attention, and the rest, well, they get left behind, clinging to the past while the path forward quietly opens in front of you. You ever notice how people panic when a door closes? Not just any door, the ones they thought would always stay open, the ones they trusted, the ones they counted on. They stare at the closed frame like it's some kind of punishment, like life just forgot to include them in the plan. They think the universe made a mistake, that the world has it out for them, that they're being left behind. And the funniest part? They don't see the hidden pattern behind it, the quiet orchestration that's been moving pieces around long before they even noticed. Doors close not to trap you, not to punish you, but to redirect you, to nudge you onto the next step, the one that actually matters. But most people never notice until the moment has already passed. And even then, they're too busy lamenting to realize they're being led. See, timing has a way of hiding in plain sight. People want everything to announce itself with fireworks, with drum rolls, with a neon sign that screams, asterisk, this is your chance. Asterisk, they want certainty. They want instructions printed on a sheet of paper. They want to see the entire staircase before taking the first step. But life doesn't work like that. Life whispers. It nudges. It arranges things quietly, cunningly, in ways no one else sees. And those who panic, those who cling, those who mourn the closed door, they miss it. They miss the invisible currents moving them forward, gently, deliberately, towards something better than they even imagined. And here's the delicious irony. The very people who feel left behind, abandoned, or punished are often the ones closest to the breakthrough. They don't see it because they're looking backward, staring at the door that closed, lamenting the opportunities they think they've lost. They're focused on absence, on loss, on what is no longer available to them. And while they're stuck in that loop, the universe, or whatever you want to call the unseen hand, is already pulling together the elements of the next stage. It's subtle, it's clever, it doesn't announce itself, it doesn't ask for applause. It simply works. And the ones paying attention, the ones willing to step forward without seeing everything get pulled forward first. People resist it at first. Of course they do. Change is uncomfortable. New directions feel uncertain, and uncertainty scares people more than anything. They cling to the old, to the familiar, to the predictable, even if it doesn't serve them anymore. They resist the gentle tug toward growth. They fight against the shift because it doesn't fit the story they wrote for themselves. And that's the beauty of it. The shift doesn't care. It doesn't negotiate with fear or hesitation. It keeps moving, keeps arranging, keeps opening new spaces, whether they fight or comply, whether they notice or ignore it. And while they're stuck in that loop, the ones who lean into the guidance, who feel the pull and take the step, they discover something amazing. They discover doors they never expected. They find paths that weren't visible before. They encounter people, opportunities, and moments that were quietly waiting for them all along. And the steps feel natural, inevitable, as if the universe has been laying the path just for them, carefully, deliberately, in a way no one else could see. That invisible alignment, that silent orchestration, is what separates those who grow from those who linger. Most people never understand this. They cry over closed doors, never realizing that each one is a setup, a nudge, a preparation. They look at loss as punishment, when really it's guidance. They think the absence of something means the absence of hope, when really it's the precursor to a greater presence. And those who notice, those who lean in, those who take the step without seeing the whole path, they move faster, higher, and farther than those who cling to what was. And the real trick? You don't even have to understand why the door closed. You don't have to know what lies ahead. All you have to do is trust the pull, trust the nudge, and take the next step. Step forward when the invisible hand guides you, when the currents shift beneath your feet, when the signs appear in ways too subtle for others to notice. That's when the real movement begins. And the closed door becomes the first piece of a puzzle you never knew you were meant to solve. You ever notice how people freak out when something feels too big to handle? Something unseen, something just beyond their control, something that whispers, asterisk, step forward, but you won't see the end yet, asterisk. Most people freeze. They want the whole map. They want a blueprint. They want a guarantee that the path won't shake beneath their feet or that the ground won't crumble out from under them. They want certainty, but life doesn't hand out certainty like candy. Life moves in shadows, in subtle pushes, in quiet nudges that don't make sense at first. People call them coincidences, fate, timing, luck. They name it anything except what it really is: preparation. A careful, deliberate setup that works whether they notice it or not. See, the funny thing is that most people only see what they're willing to see. They stare at the surface, ignoring the currents below, ignoring the gears that spin invisibly behind the curtain. They measure the world by what is obvious, by what is immediate, by what fits neatly into their expectations. And while they're busy labeling everything, life is quietly rearranging itself around them. Subtle, precise, unstoppable. The bigger the opportunity, the quieter the buildup. And those who panic, who resist, who cling to the familiar, they miss it entirely. They're too busy staring at the old to notice the new. And isn't it ironic? People fight so hard to hold on, to control, to predict, and all the while the world, or whatever unseen force nudges us, is trying to push them forward, gently, cunningly, precisely, not shoving, not shouting, just arranging things, placing the next step right in front of them, letting them stumble onto it at their own pace. But the ones who panic, the ones who wait for perfect signs, they miss the alignment. They complain, they question, they delay, and all the while, the quiet momentum keeps moving without them. And then there's the moment when they can't ignore it anymore. When the pull is too strong, when the signs are too clear, when the old life suddenly feels too heavy to carry. And that's when choice becomes real. Do you fight it? Do you resist it? Or do you lean in? Because the thing about guidance, about being led, is that it doesn't care about your fear. It doesn't argue with hesitation. It only asks that you step into the unknown, step into the discomfort, step into the space that scares you, because that's where the next stage is waiting. And it's waiting quietly, patiently, with no need for drama, with no need for applause, with no need for recognition. And it's funny how subtle it all is. People expect signs to be loud, obvious, dramatic. They want the heavens to shout, the lights to flash, the universe to announce itself with a neon board. But the biggest changes, the biggest shifts, the moments that rewrite a life, they're quiet. They slip in when no one's looking. They hide in plain sight. They move through channels invisible to the untrained eye. You feel it as a pull, a whisper, a sense of inevitability, not a demand, not a threat, just a soft but undeniable guidance that something bigger is waiting. Most people resist it because it feels uncomfortable, because it threatens their assumptions, because it demands trust in something they can't see. But the ones who move with it, who listen to the quiet pull, who step without seeing the whole path, they are the ones who get to the extraordinary. They are the ones who discover doors they didn't know existed, who meet people they weren't expecting, who find opportunities hiding in plain sight. And all of it seemed invisible until they followed the pull, until they trusted the unseen current guiding them. And isn't that the cruel joke? That the very people who panic, who resist, who cling to old safety, are missing everything, while the ones willing to follow the quiet nudge move faster, higher, farther than anyone could have predicted. The world doesn't shout. It whispers, it arranges, it leads, and only the ones who pay attention, who trust, who step, get to see the pattern unfold in their favor. It's never about understanding the whole path. It's never about seeing the final destination. It's about noticing the pull, feeling the guidance, taking the next step even when the rest is invisible, and letting the currents carry you toward what you were quietly ready for all along. You ever notice how people are terrified of moving into the unknown? They clutch onto what's familiar like it's a life preserver, even if it's full of holes, even if it's barely keeping them afloat. They stare at change like it's a monster waiting to devour them. Like stepping forward will mean losing everything they think they own. Comfort is a cage, and most people don't even realize it. They don't see the bars because they painted them with familiar colors, made them soft, made them feel safe. And that's the problem. Safety becomes a prison when the world is trying to push you forward. The world doesn't wait for anyone to feel ready. The currents are moving, whether you cling to the old life or not. Most people think growth comes with a neon sign, a big dramatic announcement, a glittering spotlight. They want proof before they take the first step. They want to see the whole staircase, even though all they need is the next step. And that's the beautiful trick. The next step is all you ever need. Life, fate, whatever you call it, doesn't hand out the whole path at once. It places the pieces quietly, cunningly, in ways too subtle for anyone else to notice. And while people hesitate, panic, complain, the steps keep being laid, one by one, for those willing to trust what they cannot yet see. It's funny how fear disguises itself as wisdom. People call it caution, prudence, reason. They think if they delay long enough, wait long enough, nothing will go wrong. But the truth is, waiting never brings clarity. Waiting only brings stagnation. Life isn't concerned with your hesitations. Life doesn't bend itself to fit your comfort. It doesn't knock politely and ask permission. It nudges, pulls, arranges, and if you resist, it will find a way around you. But if you move with it, if you lean into the unseen guidance, you discover doors that were hidden in plain sight, paths you didn't know existed, opportunities that were quietly waiting for the right moment to appear. And people hate that. They hate the ones who follow the pull. They hate those who notice the currents, who step into the unknown with trust, who move while everyone else is frozen in indecision. They call it luck, coincidence, or divine favor. But the truth is simpler than they imagine. It's alignment. Alignment between preparation and opportunity, between awareness and action, between the quiet nudges of life and the courage to follow them. And those who are too afraid to step, too skeptical to trust, they miss it. They linger in the familiar, in their cages, watching the invisible hand guide someone else forward while they tell themselves it isn't real, it isn't possible, it isn't for them. And isn't it beautiful, the way the next step works? You don't need to know the whole journey. You don't need to see the end. You don't need the map or the instructions or the guarantee. You only need the courage to take what's placed before you, to follow the subtle pull, to act when the signs are small and the path is unclear. And the moment you do, everything begins to shift. Opportunities appear in places you thought were closed. People show up who were meant to guide you. Circumstances align in ways that seem impossible until you realize you were never alone in the first place. Most people never see it coming because they are too busy looking at what they've lost, what they fear, what they think they can't control. They stare at endings and see punishment, at delays and see failure, at change and see disaster. And while they panic, the world quietly moves them forward anyway, places the steps in front of their feet anyway, whispers the guidance anyway. And the difference between those who grow and those who stagnate is simple. One listens to the pull, trusts it, and steps, and the other doubts, resists, and freezes. And the funniest part? Those who step into the unknown, those who follow the guidance, don't need approval. They don't need validation. They don't even need certainty. They just need awareness. They need courage. They need the willingness to let go of the familiar and move toward something bigger, something unseen, something prepared in silence, while everyone else was distracted by fear, doubt, and small expectations. And it's in that willingness, in that quiet trust, in that first step, that everything begins to shift, that the next stage arrives, that life's currents start carrying you toward what you were quietly ready for all along. You ever notice how people panic when they sense a change coming? Just a tiny hint, a subtle shift, and suddenly they're frozen, staring at the unknown like it's a monster waiting to devour them. They cling to what's familiar, wrapping themselves in routines, habits, and tiny predictable moments, as if holding on will protect them from the world moving forward without their permission. They don't see the invisible hand guiding them, placing the next step in front of them, nudging them toward growth, toward opportunity, toward something bigger than they can imagine. They call it coincidence, timing, luck, but you and I know it's more deliberate than that. It's preparation disguised as chaos, invisible until the moment is right, and even then most people miss it. Most people want the path laid out in neon lights, a clear map with every step spelled for them. They want certainty. They want a guarantee that nothing will break, nothing will fail, nothing will challenge them. They want the whole staircase before they climb the first step, and when they don't get it, they panic, they resist. They refuse to move, afraid of the shadows that dance along the edges of the unknown. But growth, opportunity, transformation, those things never wait for permission. They arrive in whispers, in nudges, in subtle currents that pull you forward whether you realize it or not. And the beauty of it is that it's invisible to everyone else. The people clinging to the familiar don't notice. They don't see the puzzle being rearranged while they stand frozen in place. And here's the delicious irony. The people who feel afraid, uncertain, or left behind are often the ones closest to the breakthrough. They don't see it because they're looking backward, staring at what they've lost, at doors that closed, at what they think they've missed. They focus on absence, on endings, on the comfort of the old. And while they're stuck in that loop, the universe, or whatever you want to call it, is arranging the pieces for their next stage. It's quiet. It's subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't seek applause. It simply works. And the ones paying attention, the ones who notice the pull, who feel the nudge, who take the step without seeing the entire path, get to move first. Fear disguises itself as reason, caution, prudence. People love to pretend that waiting, delaying, doubting is wisdom. But it's not. It's hesitation dressed in a fancy costume. Life isn't going to stop until you feel ready. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't slow down for indecision. It nudges, pulls, shifts, and you either step with it or you get left behind. And that's where courage comes in. Not the kind of courage that shouts or demands recognition, but the quiet, patient courage that trusts the invisible currents guiding you, that steps into the unknown when everything else screams, "Don't move." The next step doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't need a guarantee or a blueprint. All it needs is action. One small move, one choice, one moment of trust. That's how momentum begins. One step builds into another, and suddenly, doors you didn't even know existed start appearing. People show up who were meant to guide you. Opportunities quietly align. The invisible hand that's been nudging you all along becomes visible in retrospect, like a pattern you never could have seen while you were moving through the chaos. Most people will never notice this. They will mourn what was, complain about what isn't, resist the subtle guidance until it passes them by. They will try to rationalize it, call it bad luck, blame the timing, or convince themselves that the world isn't fair. But the ones who trust the nudge, who lean into the invisible push, who act even without knowing the whole story, they move faster, higher, farther. They enter spaces others can't see yet. They meet people others overlook. They find doors that were invisible to everyone else, and they step through them without hesitation because the pull is undeniable, irresistible, deliberate. And isn't it funny how subtle it all is? The world, fate, guidance, whatever you want to call it, never shouts. It never demands attention. It whispers, nudges, arranges, waits for the ones willing to listen. The rest stay stuck in fear, clinging to what they know, never realizing that stepping into the unknown was always the only way to reach the extraordinary, the next level, the moment they were quietly ready for all along. You ever notice how people resist the obvious when it stares them in the face? Something small, something subtle, something almost invisible nudges them, and they panic. They clutch the familiar like it's a lifeline, like letting go would mean falling into an abyss. They stare at what they know, at what they've built, at what they think protects them, and they call it security. They don't see the cracks in their little world, the pieces that have been quietly rearranged while they were busy sleeping, busy doubting, busy pretending everything is under control. And the funniest part? They think they're in control. They think the steps they didn't take, the opportunities they ignored, were choices. But no, the truth is simpler and far more delicious. They were being led all along, and they were too blind, too fearful, too distracted to notice it. Most people want everything to announce itself, to scream for attention, to present itself neatly with instructions and guarantees. They want the entire map laid out before they take the first step, and when it isn't, they hesitate, they overthink, they panic, they make a mess out of what was meant to be simple. Life doesn't work that way. Life whispers, it nudges, it arranges, it places the next step in front of you and waits, silently, to see if you're brave enough to take it. And the beauty is that it doesn't force you, it doesn't shout, it doesn't care about your panic. It only offers, quietly, the next step, and if you follow, everything begins to shift without a single grand announcement. Fear has a funny way of disguising itself. People call it prudence, caution, wisdom. They convince themselves that hesitation is virtue, that waiting, analyzing, doubting, protecting themselves is the smart move. But it's not. It's just fear playing dress-up. And while they linger, paralyzed by their own thinking, the world, the universe, the invisible currents keep moving. Doors open that they cannot see. Paths reveal themselves to those who step. People arrive who were waiting for someone ready to move. And the contrast is exquisite. While some cling to the familiar, the courageous are already walking into the spaces no one else can perceive. And isn't it ironic how the subtlety makes it perfect? The guidance, the unseen hand, the quiet pull nobody else notices. They scoff at it, dismiss it, call it coincidence. But those paying attention, those willing to step without seeing the full picture, they are the ones who gain. They follow the pull, they trust the rhythm, they act without guarantees, and suddenly the world begins to unfold in ways too precise to be random. And the more people doubt, the more they panic, the more hesitant they are, the clearer the pattern becomes for the one willing to follow. The next step isn't dramatic. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or drum rolls. It doesn't announce itself in grand gestures. It's subtle, barely perceptible, almost like a shadow brushing against your awareness. But if you notice it, if you feel it, if you act, momentum begins. One step leads to another. Suddenly, opportunities appear where there were none. People appear who are essential guides. Circumstances shift in ways that seem impossible until you realize it wasn't random, it was deliberate. Invisible preparation, hidden alignment, the quiet orchestration that rewards those willing to trust the pull. Most people never see it. They cry over endings. They panic at uncertainty. They cling to the old and the familiar, thinking it's protection. They ignore the subtle currents pushing them forward, the gentle nudges arranging the pieces of their life without anyone noticing. They never realize that every closed door, every delay, every uncomfortable change was preparation. That fear, hesitation, doubt, they were not meant to stop them. They were meant to test them, to see if they would trust the unseen, follow the quiet pull, step into the unknown without guarantees, and find that the next step was ready all along. And the best part? The ones who step into the unknown, who lean into the subtle guidance, who trust it without needing proof, they discover a reality invisible to everyone else. The invisible currents reveal the paths, the doors, the people, and the opportunities that others miss entirely. They move faster, higher, and farther than those clinging to fear. And the world, the universe, the unseen hand, they just keep nudging, arranging, guiding, quietly, deliberately, toward what the person was always ready to find, and they never even see it coming. You ever notice how people underestimate the power of a simple step? Just one step, a small movement forward, and suddenly everything shifts in ways they never predicted. Most people want the entire path lit, the whole staircase visible, the end already promised, because they're terrified of the unknown. They cling to what's comfortable, familiar, predictable, thinking it's safe, thinking it's enough, and that's the joke, isn't it? Comfort isn't safety. Comfort is stagnation. The world doesn't. Laughs under his breath, a slow, curling sound, like someone enjoying a secret no one else has noticed yet. Funny thing about people, they walk around thinking they've figured out the script. They think they know who wins, who loses, who gets the last word. They build their little predictions, their little assumptions, their neat little ideas of how life is supposed to treat them, how you are supposed to stay small, quiet, predictable. They get comfortable, too comfortable. And that's when life has the most fascinating sense of humor, decides to rearrange the stage in ways they never saw coming. You know, it's funny how people think the world isn't watching. They walk around acting like their actions just evaporate into thin air, like there's no echo, no ripple, no hungry little shadow waiting to bounce everything right back at them. They forget that life has this strange appetite times for balance. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need applause. It just waits. And while they're busy assuming they've gotten away with their little games, their sly comments, their smug little smirks, something out there is already collecting every piece, every intention. Not in a dramatic way, no lightning bolts, no trumpets. It's quieter, more patient. It creeps in, it studies, it remembers. See, people underestimate the power of observation, not just yours, but the world's. They think no one notices the way they twist things behind your back, or how they pretend to be harmless while dripping venom. They think their performances are flawless. They really believe they can walk around wearing masks made of arrogance and insecurity, and no one will ever peek behind them. But the world, the world has a talent for peeling masks off without touching a single thread. It knows exactly where to press, exactly when to move, exactly how to expose the truth they've been hiding like a stolen treasure. And while they're laughing, while they're whispering, while they're plotting in the dark, something else is listening, something bigger, something sharper. It doesn't respond immediately, and that's what makes it so unnerving. People mistake silence for approval. They mistake delay for escape. They think nothing is happening because they can't hear footsteps coming for them. But the steps aren't supposed to be loud. They're supposed to be unexpected. The world prefers surprises. It likes to watch people trip on the very traps they set for others. It likes to see how fast their confidence melts when the balance swings back. You might have noticed it too, how their actions don't disappear. They circle, they stain, they stick to them like a scent they can't wash off. And all this time, while they thought they were pushing you down, all they were really doing was digging the ground under their own feet. You didn't have to push, you didn't have to fight, you didn't even have to speak. Because the world observes more than anyone thinks. It sees what they do in the dark. It hears the tone behind their words. It studies the intentions behind every move, and it remembers them like a collector cherishing rare artifacts. And when the moment finally comes, it never arrives with a warning. It hits them right where they never expected. Not because you wished it, not because you forced it, but because nothing stays unbalanced forever. The world doesn't like unfinished stories. It doesn't tolerate crooked scales. It adjusts them in its own time, in its own way. And when that adjustment arrives, the ones who thought they were untouchable suddenly find themselves standing in the spotlight they hoped to avoid. Eyes wide, nerves trembling, wondering how everything flipped when they weren't looking. You ever notice how the people who underestimate you always share the same expression? That smug little half smile, the one that says they've already written your story, already decided your limits, already measured your worth with the shortest ruler they could find. They walk around convinced they know exactly where you'll end up, how far you'll go, what you'll fail at, what you'll never rise above. They think they've got you pinned like a butterfly under glass. Predictable, small, contained, and how wonderfully wrong they are. See, the funny thing about those people, the ones who think they're smarter, louder, stronger, more in control, is that they forget the one thing that turns the whole game around: timing. Timing is the trickster none of them can outsmart. Timing is the silent dealer shuffling the cards while they brag about winning a game that hasn't even started. They think everything is static. They think the version of you they once knew is the version that will stay. They don't understand how quickly life can flip, twist, stretch, and snap a story into something completely unrecognizable. Their mistake isn't doubting you. Oh no, doubt is natural. Their mistake is assuming their doubt has power. They treat their assumptions like chains, as if believing you'll never rise means you won't, as if their opinion has the authority to lock your future in place. It's almost adorable, the confidence they have in their own predictions. They think they're prophets, fortune tellers, architects of your destiny, when really they're just watching shadows on the wall and assuming they understand the whole room. They don't see the hours you spent quietly building yourself up. They don't see the moments you stayed awake while everyone else slept, sharpening your mind, strengthening your resolve, gathering every piece of strength life tried to scatter. They're blind to your preparation, your patience, your resilience, and because they don't see it, they assume it doesn't exist. They're like someone staring at the calm surface of a lake, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath. And then comes that moment, the delicious moment when timing decides it's ready to turn the page. It never warns them. It never taps them on the shoulder and says, "Watch closely now." No, timing likes theatrics. It lets them laugh a little too long, underestimate you a little too boldly, and settle into their comfortable delusion before it flips everything in one swift, elegant motion. Suddenly, the one they dismissed becomes the one they can't ignore. The one they doubted becomes the one they can't outrun. The one they mocked becomes the one standing right in front of the opportunity they thought they deserved. And oh, the look on their faces when they realize the story is shifting, there's nothing quite like it. That moment when confusion flickers into panic, when arrogance slides into disbelief, when the certainty they clung to dissolves like sugar in rain. They start replaying every moment in their minds, trying to piece together how they missed the signs, how they misread you, how they convinced themselves they understood your potential when they barely understood their own. But that's the beauty of timing. It doesn't need their permission. It doesn't ask for their approval. It doesn't bend to their expectations. It only waits for the perfect instant, the one that exposes their blindness and reveals your rise in the same breath. The instant that proves they weren't just wrong, they were spectacularly wrong. That they weren't just underestimating you, they were underestimating the forces moving on your behalf. And you, standing there in that moment, don't even have to say anything. You don't have to gloat or remind them of what they once said. Timing already did the talking for you. You ever feel that strange stillness right before something shifts? That quiet, heavy kind of silence that isn't empty at all. It's loaded, like the world is holding its breath, watching, waiting, letting pieces move where no one can see them. People laugh at the idea of hidden forces, but that's only because they're too busy staring at the surface of things. They look at what's obvious, what's loud, what's right in front of them, and they think that's all there is. They never notice the little tremors beneath their feet, the soft rustling behind their plans, the subtle rearranging of circumstances that doesn't announce itself with fireworks. But something bigger, something sharper, something far more deliberate has a habit of slipping through the cracks when no one's paying attention. It never enters through the front door. No, that would be far too simple. It prefers the quiet route, the unseen route, the route where it can twist the entire direction of your life without anyone realizing the setup was happening long before the moment popped into view. People underestimate how often the extraordinary travels in silence. They expect loud signs, flashing lights, dramatic music. They want their breakthroughs wrapped in neon. They want their victories presented on a silver platter with applause. But the biggest shifts, the ones that rewrite your story, don't arrive dressed like that. They come disguised as small nudges, tiny changes, strange coincidences that don't make sense at first. You take a turn you weren't planning to take. You meet someone you weren't supposed to meet. You get an idea you didn't know you needed. And suddenly everything starts bending in a new direction. But the best part is this. The people around you, especially the ones convinced they know your limits, never see it coming. They're too focused on their predictions, too confident in the picture they've painted of your life, too busy believing they've got you all figured out. Meanwhile, something beyond their understanding is already rearranging the board. A new opportunity, a shift in perception, a door you didn't even know existed starts unlocking without making a sound. Hidden forces nudging you towards something bigger while they keep assuming nothing will ever change. And you start to feel it, not in a loud way, not in some dramatic epiphany. It's more like a whisper brushing against the back of your mind, a subtle spark, that strange awareness that the air around you is different, that something is building, that your steps suddenly feel guided, almost pulled, toward a place that wasn't on your map before. You can't explain it, but you can sense it, like a shadow that's not threatening, but promising, like a secret being carried toward you. And the thing about these hidden shifts is that they don't care who doubts you. They don't care who thinks you're stuck. They don't care who tries to keep you small. They move with precision, slipping past every limitation others tried to put on you. While people gossip, these forces gather. While people judge, these forces align. While people cling to their opinions about what you can or can't do, these forces set the stage for something they'll never see coming. They'll look confused when the change hits, of course. People always do. They'll swear you got lucky, or someone helped you, or the world suddenly decided to favor you for no reason. They'll come up with every explanation except the truth that something bigger was moving long before they realized the ground beneath your life had shifted. They won't understand how you found yourself in the right place at the right time. They won't understand why doors opened for you that stayed locked for them. They won't understand how the invisible currents pulled your story upward while they were still betting on your downfall. But that's the thing about hidden forces. They don't need to be understood. They don't need to be announced. They only need one thing: your readiness to feel the shift, even if no one else can see it. You ever notice how the ordinary clings to people like a safety blanket? Oh, they love it. They wrap themselves in routines, predictable choices, tiny little habits that make life feel controllable. They convince themselves that staying inside the lines keeps everything tidy, manageable, safe. The ordinary whispers promises of stability, of comfort, of this is just how things are. And people swallow it whole because it's familiar, because it doesn't challenge them, because it doesn't make them look at the parts of themselves they'd rather keep locked away. The ordinary resists change with every dull, desperate breath it has. But here's the twist. Extraordinary things don't care about comfort. They don't care about tradition or predictability or whatever cozy little cage someone has built for themselves. The extraordinary isn't impressed by fear. It doesn't knock politely and ask if now is a good time. It storms in when it finds someone who's ready. And that's the catch, isn't it? Not everyone is ready. Most people think they are. But the moment life hints at something bigger, they retreat. They scramble back into the familiar like a child running from a shadow on the wall. They want greatness, but they don't want disruption. They want transformation, but they don't want the discomfort that comes with it. Readiness, real readiness, isn't loud. It doesn't stand up and shout. It's quieter than that. It's a shift in mindset, a subtle rebellion against the ordinary. It's the moment you stop pretending you're satisfied with crumbs and start preparing for the feast you're meant for. The extraordinary senses that it's like it can smell readiness, like a spark in the dark that refuses to go out. You might not say it out loud. You might not even show it. But something in your energy changes. Something inside you starts leaning forward instead of holding back. And that's when things start moving in ways you can't explain. Little chances pop up. Strange alignments happen. Doors you thought were welded shut start creaking open. It's not magic. No, it's alignment. The extraordinary gravitates toward people who've made space for it. Not people who are lucky. Not people who are loud. Not people who demand it. People who are ready. People who've done the quiet work, the internal kind. The kind that no one applauds. the kind that no one sees coming. But the ordinary isn't happy about that. Oh, it fights back. It whispers doubts. It sends distractions. It gives you excuses that sound almost reasonable. Stay where you are. This is good enough. Don't risk it. The ordinary wants to keep you comfortable because comfort is the only thing it can offer. But you're different when you're ready. You feel the pull, the itch, the restlessness. You start noticing how small the cage really was, how low the ceiling actually hung. You begin to see beyond the limits that once felt like home. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. People around you might start getting uncomfortable too. They'll notice you're changing, even if they don't know why. They'll sense the shift in you, the calm, the focus, the determination. And the funny thing is, they might try to pull you back into the ordinary, because your transformation threatens everything they've accepted for themselves. It's easier for them if you stay the same. It reassures them that their own fear is reasonable. But deep down, they know something is happening. They know something is calling you that never called them. They might mock it, ignore it, pretend it's nothing, but they feel it, and it unsettles them. Extraordinary events, opportunities, connections, they don't choose the loudest person in the room. They choose the one who's been quietly preparing, the one who's done the inner work, the one who stopped letting fear drive. They choose the person who's cracked open enough to receive something bigger than the ordinary life they were handed. And once that alignment clicks, once readiness meets opportunity, everything around you starts bending toward a new shape, a new rhythm, a new direction. You don't chase extraordinary moments. You become someone they're drawn to. The ordinary might resist, it might cling, it might scream in protest, but it can't stop what's approaching when you've outgrown it. It can't hold back the shift once you've already stepped beyond its reach. The extraordinary doesn't care how long you spent doubting yourself. It doesn't care who overlooked you. It doesn't care who tried to keep you small. It only cares that you're ready now. You ever notice how most people only pay attention to what they can touch, what they can count, what they can neatly label and tuck into their little mental drawers? They stare at the obvious and call it reality. They cling to what's visible and ignore everything that moves underneath it. But awareness, real awareness, that's a different creature entirely. It doesn't look at the world the way everyone else does. It notices the flickers, the shifts, the small hints life slips into the cracks when it thinks no one is watching. It picks up on the patterns hiding behind coincidences, the meanings tucked beneath inconvenience, the signals wrapped inside silence. Awareness doesn't wait for permission. It pulls back the curtains before anyone realizes there even were times curtains. Most people are sleepwalking through their own lives. They see a closed door and assume it means no. They watch something fall apart and assume it means failure. They experience a delay and assume it means denied. Their eyes work, but their perception doesn't. They miss the signs that something is stirring, something is aligning, something is being prepared just outside their field of vision. And because they can't see it, they think there's nothing there. They don't realize that the biggest opportunities rarely walk up and introduce themselves. They whisper, they linger, they test you, tugging lightly at your awareness to see if you're paying attention. But when you're aware, truly aware, everything starts to shift. Little things stand out. You start noticing patterns in your missteps, clarity in your mistakes, direction in your discomfort. What once felt like random chaos begins to form. A shape, a trail, a path only visible to whoever's willing to look deeper. And that's where perception sharpens into something powerful. You start to see how life nudges you, how circumstances bend, how certain people leave right before something better arrives, how you're redirected not because you're being denied, but because you're being aligned. People might laugh at that idea, of course. They always laugh at what they don't understand. They call it overthinking, or wishful thinking, or superstition. They assume awareness is just imagination stretching itself too far. But that's only because they've never experienced what it feels like to suddenly recognize a pattern that was shaping your life long before you became conscious of it. They've never felt the moment when everything clicks at once, when you realize the coincidences weren't coincidences at all, just hints you weren't ready to interpret earlier. And here's the trick. The more aware you become, the more opportunities reveal themselves. They didn't magically appear, they were always there, woven into the background like hidden ink waiting for the right light. You were just too distracted by fear, or doubt, or noise to notice them. But once awareness sharpens, once your eyes stop glazing over the details, the invisible becomes visible. The impossible becomes reachable. The unusual becomes intentional. You start seeing connections between moments you once thought were meaningless. You start sensing where to step next, even if the path isn't fully lit. You begin to understand why certain things took longer than you wanted, why certain people were removed, why certain delays protected you from walking straight into something you weren't ready for. Awareness is like a spotlight that doesn't light up the whole stage, just the next step. But that's enough, more than enough. Because once that light moves, once you follow it, the entire direction of your life can shift without a single dramatic announcement. And while everyone else is stumbling around waiting for a sign that punches them in the face, you're catching the whisper, the subtle tug, the barely there hint. You're recognizing opportunities they call accidents. You're sensing change before it happens. You're adjusting while they're denying. And that difference, that difference is what transforms everything. Awareness becomes your advantage. It turns the invisible into guidance, the quiet into momentum, the subtle into revelation. And the world has no idea how you keep getting ahead, how you keep landing where you need to be, how you detect things before they break, how you move before doors close. They think it's luck, coincidence, maybe even some strange charm. They don't understand that the only real secret was that you started paying attention while they were still pretending the invisible didn't exist. You ever notice how people stare at you with that tiny, poisonous smile that says they've already decided who you are? They don't need to know your story, your battles, your nights full of clenched fists and quiet prayers. No, they just look at you once, maybe twice, and think they've got you all wrapped up in a neat little box labeled, "Not enough." Funny, isn't it? People judge faster than they breathe. They freeze you in their minds like a bad photograph, and then they walk around thinking that image is the whole truth. They don't even realize how wrong they are. Or maybe they do. Maybe they like it that way. Makes them feel safe, makes them feel in control. But you and I, we know better, don't we? Because deep inside, there's this fire building, a quiet one, the kind that doesn't roar like a lion yet, but simmers like a whisper you can't quite ignore. While they're busy underestimating you, you're busy growing, stretching, tightening the cracks they hoped would break you apart. They don't see that part. It's invisible to them. They only see what confirms what they already want to believe. That's the trick. People don't look for truth. They look for comfort. And you don't fit their comfort. Not yet. So they reduce you to something small, something harmless, something forgettable. They think if they label you early enough, you'll stay exactly where they put you. But the joke's on them. Because people always forget that the quiet ones, the underestimated ones, the not good enough ones, they're the ones who end up rewriting the script. They're the ones who show up one day with a strength no one predicted. You become the kind of surprise that rattles the room, the kind of shift that makes everyone whisper, "How did we miss that?" Oh, they didn't miss it. They ignored it. Ignorance is comfortable. Recognition? That's uncomfortable, especially when it means admitting they were wrong about you from the beginning. And the more they doubt you, the more they feed something inside you. It's amusing if you think about it. They think their disbelief is weakening you, but it's doing the opposite. It's pushing you, sharpening you, creating this private little tension that only you can feel. This pressure that squeezes out hesitation and forces you to grow in the dark. And then, one day, you'll come out of that dark room changed in ways they'll never understand. People always fear what grows where they cannot see. They fear what they didn't shape with their own expectations. But you know what's even funnier? They think they're the ones watching you, studying you, judging you. They think they're in control of your image, but they don't realize you're watching them too, watching their assumptions, watching the limits they try to put on your name, watching the smug certainty in their eyes when they think you'll never go beyond the place they assigned you. And every time they underestimate you, you learn something about them, how shallow their vision is, how small their imagination is, and how fragile their confidence really is. Because only people who feel threatened try so hard to shrink others. And while they're busy shrinking you, you are expanding, quietly, patiently, deliberately. You're building a version of yourself that doesn't need their approval, their permission, their applause. You're building something they can't touch because they never believed it existed in the first place. That's the beauty of being underestimated. It gives you room to grow without their interference. It gives you the freedom to reinvent yourself without their fingers smudging the process. And eventually, the same people who once dismissed you will find themselves squinting at the new you, confused, startled, maybe even a little intimidated. They'll say you changed, but you didn't change. You just stopped fitting into the tiny box they crafted for you. And nothing unsettles people more than watching someone crawl out of the mold they tried to trap you in. That's when the shock comes. That's when the silence falls. That's when they realize you were never small. They were just too blind to see the magnitude forming right in front of them. You know what people hate the most? Not failure, not chaos, not even truth. No, no, no. What they hate is the moment you rise in a way they never predicted. The moment you break the pattern they built for you in their heads. Because people love patterns, they adore predictability. It helps them sleep at night. They think, ah yes, this person will always stay exactly where I placed them, right there on the bottom shelf, collecting dust. And the moment you move just a little, they panic inside. They won't show it, of course. They hide it behind sarcasm, behind disbelief, behind that polite little smile that says, don't try too hard. But inside, they're shaking, because you stepping up means their worldview stepping down. And what they'll never admit is how threatened they are by your potential. They try to disguise it as concerns, advice, limits. Oh, they're masters at limits. They hand them out like party favors. Be realistic. Don't aim too high. People like you, well, that's the one that always makes me laugh. People like you, as if they know what you even means. As if they've spent 1 minute inside your mind, inside your battles, inside the conversations you've had with yourself at 3 in the morning. They don't know people like you. They only know the version of you that makes them feel safe, superior, settled. And when you threaten that version, oh, they don't like that one bit. But that's where it gets interesting. Because sometimes the only way to truly grow is to let their doubts echo around you until you can hear something else underneath, something stronger. Their disbelief becomes a kind of strange soundtrack, a rhythm that pushes you forward. Each laugh, each shrug, each "you can't do it" turns into fuel. A different kind of fire, a darker kind, the kind that doesn't burn you, it sharpens you, makes your steps more precise, your thoughts more focused. It's funny how the very people trying to hold you back end up building the pressure that launches you forward. And while they whisper behind your back, acting like they've read the whole story already, you keep writing new pages, pages they don't see, pages they could never imagine. You grow in moments they're not even thinking about you. You work when they're asleep. You plan when they're distracted. You grind when they assume you've given up. They don't understand how quiet transformation works. They think change always comes with a spotlight, an announcement, a drum roll. But real change? It happens in silence, in shadows, in the private corners of your life where their opinions can't reach